Fairview, Indiana, was a town woven from the sturdy, unassuming fabric of American heartland tradition. Its rhythm was as predictable as the changing seasons, marked by the steady drone of tractors across endless cornfields, the Friday night roar of the high school football stadium under floodlights, and the comforting clatter of Sunday dinner dishes in every home. Here, life moved at a measured pace, deeply rooted in the soil and the sweat of honest labor. Practicality was the guiding star, its light favoring calloused hands and common sense over abstract thought or flights of fancy. Innovation, if it wasn't immediately obvious in its benefit to a healthy crop yield or a sturdy barn, was often viewed with a quiet, polite suspicion. This was a place where tangible results mattered, where a solid working truck held more esteem than a theoretical blueprint for flight. Within this landscape lived Ethan Miller, a boy whose spirit hummed with a different kind of electricity. At 8 years old, he was a slender wisp, often overshadowed by the more robust boys of Fairview. His unruly mop of brown hair seemed to perpetually sprout a stray wire or a tiny screw, a testament to his constant communion with the mechanical world. Unlike his peers, who found their thrill in muddy creek beds or the dizzying height of oak trees, Ethan was captivated by the unseen universes within machines. While others dreamed of touchdowns, he dreamed of gears meshing, circuits firing, and the precise dance of unseen components. To him, an old, discarded lawnmower wasn't junk. It was a treasure chest of mysteries, waiting to be unlocked. His fingers, almost always smudged with grease or dust, were his tools of exploration, his primary means of understanding the world. He found a profound solace in the quiet logic of internal mechanisms, a clarity that often eluded him in the messy, unpredictable world of human interaction. Ethan was an introverted child, his thoughts racing at a speed few could match, but his words often tripped over themselves, leaving him inarticulate, his complex mechanical insights trapped behind a shy smile. One sweltering July afternoon, the kind where the air hung thick and humid, the neighbor's beloved radio flyer wagon suffered a catastrophic wheel collapse. Little Susie Henderson, barely 4, wailed inconsolably in her front yard, her bright red wagon lying pathetic and broken. Most kids would have offered clumsy comfort or simply moved on to another game. Ethan, however, walked over, his head tilted, studying the twisted axle and splintered wood. He didn't say much, just knelt down, his fingers gently probing the damage. He disappeared into his own garage, returning 20 minutes later with a small, battered toolbox and a piece of sturdy, salvaged metal from an old garden gate. Without a word, he set about straightening the axle, reinforcing the wheel with the metal brace, and reattaching it with a series of precise, almost surgical, movements. Within an hour, the wagon stood sturdy once more. Susie, her tears forgotten, gasped in delight and immediately clambered back in. Ethan simply offered a small, quiet smile, satisfied that the problem was solved, the mechanism restored. He didn't wait for thanks, nor did he expect any. He just liked to fix things. This small act of quiet competence, of offering a solution without fanfare, was Ethan's save the cat moment, showcasing his innate kindness and his unique gift for bringing order to mechanical chaos, a quality few truly appreciated. His true obsession, however, lay with anything that pulsed with electric life. One brisk autumn evening, his father, Arthur Miller, a man of strong hands and even stronger convictions, grumbled about the broken VCR in the living room. "Another piece of junk for the landfill," he sighed, kicking at the defunct machine with the toe of his worn work boot. "Cost too much to fix, and they don't even make 'em like they used to." To Arthur, the VCR was trash, an inanimate object whose purpose had ceased. To Ethan, it was a challenge, an invitation. As soon as his parents were engrossed in their evening newspaper, he covertly carried the heavy VCR out to the dusty, dimly lit garage. For days, the garage became his sanctuary, a world of fascinating possibilities. He worked with a meticulous, almost reverent focus, his small screwdriver seeming to possess a will of its own. He laid out the VCR's internal organs on an old workbench, each component a puzzle piece in a grand design. He labeled tiny screws with crayon on scraps of paper, drew intricate diagrams of wire connections, his brow furrowed in intense concentration. He cleaned the grimy tape heads, examined the delicate gears that once pulled the magnetic ribbon, and traced the invisible pathways of the circuit board. His parents, initially amused by his tinkering, would occasionally poke their heads in. Still playing with that junk? Ethan, his mother, Martha Miller, would ask with a fond but exasperated smile, "Don't make too much of a mess, dear." Their amusement quickly curdled into polite exasperation as the VCR remained in pieces, its internal organs perpetually splayed across the workbench. "That's a lot of wasted time, son," Arthur would often remark, glancing at the dismantled machine, "when you could be helping me with the fence post." Ethan, in his own quiet way, understood how things worked on a deeper, almost intuitive level. He saw the elegant logic behind the intricate movements of a VCR's internal gears, how each cog precisely engaged the next, how magnetic fields translated into moving pictures. One evening, emboldened by a minor breakthrough in understanding the VCR's tape-loading mechanism, he tried to explain his discovery to his father. "Dad," he began, his voice earnest, his small hands gesturing animatedly. "The cam gear is stripped, but if I can replace it with one from the old sewing machine motor in the shed, I think the tape will load again." He spoke with a rapid-fire passion, using words that were beyond his years, words he'd gleaned from obscure library books and his own relentless experimentation. Arthur Miller, wiping sweat from his brow after a long day in the fields, merely offered a tired, indulgent smile. He patted Ethan's head, a gesture of affectionate dismissal. "That's a nice little hobby, son, all this figuring things out," he said, his gaze fixed on the broken VCR's useless shell. "But we need things that work, Ethan, not things that are in pieces. We need things that are practical, that earn their keep. All that fiddling won't put food on the table." His words, though not unkind, landed with the quiet thud of a definitive statement. He saw a child's distraction, a harmless pastime. He failed to see the burgeoning genius, the insatiable curiosity that pulsed beneath his son's quiet exterior. This seemingly innocent moment, the gentle pat on the head, the dismissal of his insights as mere hobby, established the core misunderstanding that would define much of Ethan's early life. It was a subtle, yet profound, planting of the seeds of his future internal conflict and his deep-seated yearning for validation, for someone to truly see the vibrant, mechanical world that spun inside his head. He longed for understanding. But in Fairview, understanding came in calloused hands and steady work, not in circuit diagrams and disassembled electronics. The summer of Ethan's 12th year brought with it a heat wave that clung to Fairview like a suffocating blanket, wilting the cornfields and slowing the already deliberate pace of life to a crawl. The air conditioning in the Miller household, a relic from the early 80s, sputtered and gasped its last breath, leaving the family to swelter in the humid Indiana nights. But the true source of simmering frustration was the old Zenith television in the living room. Its picture, once a vibrant splash of color, had degraded into a fuzzy, flickering shadow, punctuated by an infuriating, high-pitched whine. For Arthur and Martha Miller, it was more than just an inconvenience. It was an added expense they couldn't afford. Arthur, a man whose hands understood the honest grit of a wrench on a tractor engine, but grew baffled by the delicate intricacies of electronics, viewed the ailing TV as yet another manifestation of modern-day fragility, a costly nuisance. He'd poked at the antenna, slapped its dusty casing, and grumbled about planned obsolescence. But the screen remained stubbornly uncooperative. Ethan, however, saw not a broken appliance, but an invitation. He watched his father's futile attempts, listened to his mother's resigned sighs, and a quiet conviction began to bloom in his chest. He knew, with an almost tactile certainty, that he could fix it. He'd spent countless hours poring over discarded electronics from the town dump, salvaging parts, and, more importantly, understanding the fundamental principles that governed their operation. This television, with its struggling picture and irritating whine, was a puzzle begging to be solved. He genuinely believed he was helping, driven by an innate, overwhelming desire to understand, to mend, to bring order back to chaotic circuits. One sweltering Saturday afternoon, while his parents were out running errands in town, a quiet determination settled over Ethan. He dragged the heavy zenith from its perch, carefully laid it on a drop cloth in the center of the living room, and retrieved his most trusted screwdrivers. With a surgeon's precision, he began to dismantle it. The familiar scent of warm dust and aged plastic filled the air as he methodically removed the back panel, exposing the intricate copper-laced landscapes of its circuit boards. Wires, like colorful veins, snaked through the chassis. He worked with an intense focus. His brow furrowed in concentration, his small fingers surprisingly adept as they navigated the delicate components. He spread the resistors, capacitors, and various tubes across the Persian rug, each piece a vital clue in the mechanical mystery. He traced the power lines, examined the flyback transformer, his mind already formulating hypotheses about the source of the distortion. He was a boy utterly lost in his element, convinced he was on the cusp of restoring harmony to their living room. The front door creaked open, shattering Ethan's absorption. His parents stood frozen on the threshold, grocery bags still clutched in their hands, their eyes widening in horror at the scene before them. The living room, usually a sanctuary of neat, if worn, comfort, had been transformed into a deconstructed electronics graveyard. Wires snaked across the floor like metallic serpents. Circuit boards lay exposed like alien anatomy, and the skeletal remains of the Zenith TV, its cathode ray tube staring blankly, dominated the space. Arthur Miller, his face a mask of shock, dropped his grocery bag. Oranges rolled across the hardwood floor as his jaw tightened. "Ethan, what in tarnation have you done?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the silent, dismantled house, vibrating with a mixture of anger and utter exasperation. He saw not a project, but destruction, not ingenuity, but defiance. His practical mind, accustomed to seeing things either whole or broken beyond repair, couldn't comprehend this chaotic dissection. That television was already limping along. "Son, and now you've truly murdered it. This isn't fixing. This is vandalism." Martha Miller, softer in demeanor, but equally dismayed by the sheer scale of the disruption and the unspoken cost, placed her hand over her mouth, her eyes welling with disappointment. "Oh, Ethan, why would you do this? We don't have money to just buy a new one, because you wanted to play scientist with our only source of entertainment. This is reckless, and it's disrespectful." Her voice cracked, conveying a deep hurt that settled like a lead weight in Ethan's stomach. They scolded him, their voices rising in a crescendo of frustration. They emphasized the inconvenience, the mess, the looming expense, and above all, his perceived disobedience. Ethan, shrinking under the barrage, felt a familiar knot of hurt and misunderstanding tightening in his chest. He tried desperately to explain, to make them see. "No, Dad, Mom. It wasn't completely broken, I found it. It's just a loose connection in the horizontal deflection circuit, and maybe a failing capacitor in the power supply. I think I can fix it. I just need a replacement 25-volt electrolytic capacitor and a soldering iron." His explanations, a torrent of technical jargon that was perfectly logical to his own mind, were utterly alien to theirs. He gestured to the exposed components, hoping they'd see the elegant problem he was on the verge of solving. But his words were lost in their exasperation. His father, running a hand through his hair, sighed heavily. "Excuses, Ethan. Just excuses. You've ruined it. That's all there is to it." The scolding ended with a clear, unequivocal directive from Arthur, delivered with a tone that brooked no argument. No more taking things apart. Ethan, not in this house. Not our things. Focus on what's practical. Things that make sense. Things that work. Not things you make into a pile of junk, Martha added, her voice weary. We just want you to be sensible, dear. To learn a useful skill. This isn't useful. From that day forward, a silent, unspoken truce settled over the Miller household. Ethan, deeply hurt and profoundly misunderstood, retreated into himself. His tinkering, once an open, albeit messy, pursuit, was now relegated to hidden corners of the garage, the dusty space under his bed, and the quiet hours after his parents had gone to sleep. He collected discarded electronics from bins behind the hardware store, working on them in secret, his passion burning brighter in the shadows. His parents, believing they had successfully steered him onto the right path, a path of practicality and tangible utility, continued to misunderstand the true depth of his innate mechanical genius, the insatiable curiosity that drove him to dissect and rebuild. The television incident, though seemingly minor, became the point of no return. It wasn't just a scolding. It was a profound reinforcement of their lack of belief in his non-traditional talents, driving a wedge between his innate curiosity and their practical expectations. Ethan felt a profound internal conflict, a yearning to conform, to gain their approval and alleviate their worries, battling fiercely with the irresistible pull of his secret passion. He was a boy caught between two worlds, and the one he truly belonged to was still unseen by those who loved him most. Years folded into one another like the pages of an old textbook. Ethan Miller, no longer the small, bewildered boy of the television incident, was now a quiet, slightly awkward teenager navigating the labyrinthine hallways of Fairview High. The unspoken truce with his parents had calcified into a daily reality. He dutifully completed his chores, maintained respectable, if not stellar, grades in his core subjects, and participated in the occasional community event, all to project an image of the sensible young man his parents envisioned. Yet, beneath this veneer of conformity, his passion for understanding how things worked burned brighter than ever. His bedroom became a clandestine laboratory, filled with salvaged circuits, humming motors, and the faint soldering iron scent of invention. He devoured books on electrical engineering and rudimentary programming from the town's small library, his mind buzzing with ideas that felt light years beyond Fairview's practical horizons. He felt suffocated by the unspoken expectation that he would eventually take over his father's modest general repair shop, or perhaps pursue a good honest trade, like welding. The annual Fairview High Science Fair was typically a state affair, dominated by meticulously cultivated agricultural projects, optimal corn yields with nitrogen-rich soil, or the effect of local rainfall on soybean growth. This year, however, a whisper of something different stirred. Ethan, after much internal debate and fueled by a stubborn defiance born of years of quiet misunderstanding, decided to enter. His project was unconventional, to say the least, a rudimentary robotic arm, cobbled together from scavenged parts. An old car battery powered its jerky movements, stripped wires served as its tendons, and the hand was an improvised clamp fashioned from a discarded pair of pliers. It was clunky, imperfect, prone to fits of mechanical temperament, but it held flashes of undeniable brilliance in its conceptual design and intricate wiring. He had built it in secret, late at night, the only light in his room coming from a bare bulb and the faint glow of his soldering iron, driven by an undying, almost desperate, need to create. Its purpose was simple: to pick up and sort marbles by color. A new face had joined the faculty that year, Ms. Eleanor Vance, the new science teacher. She was a breath of fresh air, having recently moved to Fairview from a much larger, more progressive city on the East Coast. Young, with an infectious enthusiasm and eyes that sparkled with genuine curiosity. She was passionate about fostering critical thinking and genuine scientific inquiry, not just rote memorization. Unlike the other teachers, who politely admired the prize-winning pumpkins and the carefully graphed chemical reactions. Ms. Vance walked through the gymnasium, her gaze sweeping over the displays, searching for something more, her sharp eye for latent talent, honed in urban classrooms filled with diverse learning styles, immediately gravitated towards Ethan's unassuming booth. She saw beyond the rough exterior of his contraption, past the salvaged parts, to the sheer ingenuity and complex thinking that had brought it to life. She was the helper, the first adult in Ethan's life who truly possessed the vision to see the profound light within him, a light his own parents had inadvertently dimmed. When it was Ethan's turn to present, he, usually shy and withdrawn, underwent a subtle transformation. As he began to explain his creation, his voice, normally quiet, gained a surprising resonance. His hands, perpetually stained with grease, moved with an almost balletic precision as he gestured to the various components. He demonstrated how the arm, despite its humble origins and occasional stutter, could accurately pick up a red marble, transfer it to a designated slot, then repeat the process for a blue one. It was clunky. Yes, but it worked. And the logic behind its rudimentary programming, a series of simple switches and relays, hinted at a mind capable of far more complex algorithms. Ms. Vance, captivated, asked a series of probing questions. She didn't seek to trip him up or expose flaws. Rather, she challenged him to explain the underlying principles, to articulate the why behind his choices. She pushed him deeper, recognizing his intuitive grasp of mechanics and rudimentary robotics. Her questions weren't about what he had built, but about what he understood, and his answers, though still slightly halting, revealed an intellect that transcended the simple parameters of a high school science fair. "Ethan," she exclaimed, her face alight with genuine excitement. "This isn't just a project. This is true engineering. The way you've utilized these disparate parts, the elegant simplicity of your logic gates. You have a rare gift." She praised his ingenuity, her words a balm to years of quiet dismissal. "Have you ever considered advanced robotics clubs or summer programs? There are universities, like MIT, that have entire departments dedicated to this kind of innovation." Her enthusiasm was contagious, igniting a spark of daring hope in Ethan's chest. Just as Ms. Vance was speaking, Ethan's parents, Arthur and Martha Miller, arrived. They had made a point of attending the fair, albeit with a faint air of duty rather than genuine interest in the abstract sciences. They had already politely nodded at Mr. Henderson's prize-winning hog breeding display and had spent a comfortable 20 minutes discussing soil composition with the local FFA chapter advisor. They approached Ethan's booth, their smiles polite but a little strained. Arthur, his arms crossed, eyed the jumble of wires with a familiar skepticism. Martha, ever practical, winced subtly at the visible grime on Ethan's hands. "It's a nice little hobby, Ethan. Very clever," Arthur said, patting his son's shoulder with a firm, paternal squeeze that felt more like a grounding than an encouragement. He barely glanced at Ms. Vance, who was still mid-sentence, her face beaming. "But you know, son, Mr. Henderson at the auto shop is looking for an apprentice this summer. Good, honest work. Real practical skills. You know, something that'll put food on the table right away." Martha, ever the diplomat, interjected with a gentle but firm tone. "Practical. Ethan, you need practical skills for the future, not just tinkering. We want you to have a secure future, dear. Something solid." She offered a tight, polite smile to Ms. Vance, effectively dismissing her enthusiastic suggestions of advanced robotics clubs or prestigious summer programs as overzealousness. Perhaps even a bit naive for a small town like Fairview. They were oblivious, utterly blind, to the immense, rare talent Ms. Vance saw, to the genuine genius that pulsed within their quiet son. They believed they were guiding him, protecting him, gently steering him towards a sensible career that promised stability. Ethan felt the familiar sting of their misunderstanding, a dull ache in his chest. Even when his talent was externally validated, when an expert like Ms. Vance saw his potential, his parents remained stubbornly blind to its true magnitude. Their words, intended as guidance and love, landed instead as a subtle, painful reminder that the gap between his world and theirs remained vast and unbridged. He was grateful for Ms. Vance's belief, but his parents' dismissal, quiet yet pervasive, was a powerful force that still dictated his internal conflict. He longed for their understanding, for their pride in his true calling, but for now, that longing remained an unfulfilled echo in the quiet, crowded gymnasium. The final year of high school loomed over Ethan like a thundercloud, heavy with the unspoken expectations of Fairview. The cornfields still stretched endlessly. The Friday night lights still burned bright. But for Ethan, the air was thick with a palpable pressure to conform, to choose a practical path. His father, Arthur Miller, now more than ever the embodiment of the misguided, arrogant entity Type B, was a constant, subtle force pushing him towards what Arthur considered responsible. Arthur, a man who believed firmly in the dignity of manual labor and the tangible security of a steady paycheck, consistently, almost daily, suggested Ethan take over the family's struggling general repair shop after graduation. "It's honest work, son," he'd often say, polishing a worn wrench. "And there's always a need for a good pair of hands in this town." He also floated the idea of welding, or perhaps a lucrative apprenticeship at the local factory. To Arthur, university, especially one focused on abstract sciences and theoretical concepts like robotics, was an impractical waste of hard-earned money for a tinkerer. He dismissed Ethan's burgeoning interest in MIT as a pipe dream, a fantastical notion for city kids, subtly discouraging him from even applying, convinced it would only lead to disappointment and debt. Ethan felt suffocated by these well-meaning but crushing expectations, caught in a suffocating bind between his parents' desperate hopes for his practical future and his own burning, undeniable ambition. The weight of their expectations grew exponentially with the arrival of a cruel, unforeseen blow, a severe downturn in the local economy. The once sturdy pillars of Fairview began to crack. The town's largest employer, the aging textile mill, announced massive layoffs, sending ripples of fear through every household. Farmers, already struggling with fluctuating crop prices, faced crippling droughts. Arthur's general repair shop, which had always just about broken even, now teetered on the brink of closure, customers opting for cheaper, disposable goods rather than costly repairs. The Miller family, like so many others in Fairview, experienced a significant financial crisis. Meals became simpler, new clothes were forgone, and the old Zenith TV, ironically still in pieces in the garage, remained a symbol of what they couldn't afford. This downturn was a deeply personal blow for Ethan. He saw the worry etched on his mother's face, the lines of stress deepening around his father's eyes. He felt the acute weight of their struggles, the constant, unspoken pressure to contribute. His parents, desperate and overwhelmed, inadvertently doubled down on the pressure for him to immediately enter the workforce after graduation, to forego any impractical higher education, and to help support the family. "We need all hands on deck." "Ethan," his mother, Martha, whispered one evening, her voice thin with exhaustion. "Your hobbies they're a luxury right now. We need you to think about what's responsible." The idea that his passion, his true calling, was a mere luxury they could no longer afford, twisted a knife in his gut. Ethan, torn between an overwhelming sense of loyalty to his struggling family and the undeniable, irresistible pull of his own passion, experienced profound self-doubt. He spent sleepless nights wrestling with his conscience. Should he abandon his dreams? Should he accept the apprenticeship with Mr. Henderson, or take over the repair shop, burying his ambition for the sake of his family's immediate needs? The thought of giving up his impractical aspirations, of extinguishing the intellectual fire that had always burned within him, filled him with a desolate ache. He felt utterly isolated in this decision, facing it alone in the quiet confines of his room. The distant hum of the town's dwindling activity, the only soundtrack to his internal conflict. Then, in the midst of this despair, the thick envelope arrived. It bore the prestigious seal of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Ms. Eleanor Vance, his unwavering helper, had, without his full knowledge, tirelessly encouraged him, provided glowing recommendations, and meticulously guided him through the daunting application process, seeing a spark in him that others missed. Ethan tore it open with trembling hands. An acceptance letter. A scholarship, generous but not full, for a prestigious summer robotics program, offering a glimpse into the cutting-edge world he so desperately longed to inhabit. It was a lifeline, a validation, a glimpse into his true potential. But it was contingent on him committing to his higher education path, a path that now seemed financially insurmountable. The MIT enrollment deadline loomed like a looming storm cloud, a relentless, ticking clock. Every passing day amplified the internal pressure. Ms. Vance, sensing his despair and the immense burden he carried, visited him after school. She saw the familiar flicker of brilliance in his eyes, dimmed by worry. She pushed him gently, but firmly. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady and kind. "This isn't just about a scholarship for a summer program. This is about your future. This is about what you were meant to do. Your talent. It's rare. It's too important to waste." She spoke not of money, but of purpose, of destiny. The decision weighed heavily, a crushing burden on his young shoulders. On one side, the immediate, tangible need of his family, the path of perceived duty, sacrificing his dream for their stability. On the other, the burning, insatiable desire to pursue his destiny, to unlock the complex mysteries of robotics, with only the vague, uncertain hope of helping his family later, perhaps in a way they couldn't yet fathom. The financial strain, combined with his parents' persistent, unspoken disapproval of his unrealistic ambitions, became the crucible in which his future would be forged. This was his ultimate test, a solitary battle between perceived obligation and true calling. The silence of Fairview, once a comfort, now felt like a vast, isolating echo chamber for his agonizing choice. He had to decide, and the clock was relentlessly ticking. The air in the Miller household was thick with unspoken tension, heavier than the Indiana humidity that often blanketed Fairview. The acceptance letter from MIT lay on the kitchen table, a beacon of unimaginable possibility for Ethan, and a source of quiet anxiety for his parents. Despite the looming family financial crisis, despite the unspoken expectation that he would abandon his impractical aspirations for immediate, tangible work, Ethan, fueled by Ms. Vance's unwavering belief and the burning conviction within his own heart, made the most difficult and defiant decision of his young life. He would go to MIT. It wasn't a shouted rebellion, but a quiet, firm declaration of his true path, a commitment to the world of gears and circuits that had always called to him. His parents, though outwardly accepting, harbored deep reservations. Arthur Miller, his brow perpetually furrowed with worry, expressed his concerns in clipped, anxious tones. "It's a lot of money, Ethan, for theories, when we need practical solutions here." Martha, ever the empathetic one, tried to mask her disappointment. But Ethan saw the subtle slump in her shoulders, the fleeting worry in her eyes. "We just want you to be secure, dear," she'd say, her voice soft but tinged with unease. "The world out there, it's not always kind to those who don't stick to what's real." Their words, though well-intentioned, carried the sting of lingering skepticism, a subtle undertone that his choice was a selfish indulgence, a flight from responsibility. Ethan arrived at MIT like a solitary seed dropped into a bustling, fertile garden. He was a brilliant mind from a quiet farm town, suddenly immersed in a world teeming with prodigies, each seemingly more intelligent and self-assured than the last. The initial months were a gauntlet. The academic pace was relentless, the competition fierce, and the sheer intellectual horsepower surrounding him was overwhelming. He felt awkward, his rural sensibilities clashing with the fast-paced urban environment. Self-doubt, a shadow he thought he'd left behind in Fairview, crept back into his thoughts. He missed the quiet order of his garage, the familiar comfort of disassembled appliances. Yet, his innate curiosity, that insatiable drive to understand and create, refused to be extinguished. He poured himself into his studies, particularly in robotics, spending countless hours in the labs, his hands once again stained with grease. But this time, the grease of progress. He found solace in the hum of servers and the precise movements of robotic arms, a language he understood far better than the nuanced complexities of human interaction. Years melted away in a blur of late-night coding sessions, intense theoretical discussions, and the intoxicating thrill of innovation. During his final year, the annual National Collegiate Robotics Competition loomed, the most prestigious event of its kind. Ethan, now leaner, more self-assured, led a small underdog team, a motley crew of equally brilliant but unconventional students who shared his passion. Their robot, nicknamed the Navigator, was a marvel of minimalist design and groundbreaking innovation, powered by a new AI navigation system that seamlessly integrated his unique insights into mechanical precision and intuitive logic. It was a culmination of his childhood tinkering, elevated to an art form. They faced off against the heavily favored Stanford team, led by a notoriously arrogant and well-funded rival, Dr. Alistair Vance. Vance, a brilliant but dismissive prodigy, had publicly sneered at underfunded regional teams with quaint ideas, a thinly veiled jab at Ethan's modest background and unconventional design. The competition was a whirlwind of intense challenges, intricate obstacle courses, and precision tasks. The tension in the crowded arena, packed with industry giants and aspiring engineers, was electric. In the final, decisive round, with seconds ticking away on the massive overhead clock, the Navigator was poised for victory. It was navigating the complex final obstacle course, just meters from the finish line, when disaster struck. A critical component, a tiny servo motor responsible for the robot's delicate manipulator arm, suddenly seized. The Navigator juddered to a halt, its arm hanging limply, unable to complete the final, crucial task of placing the winning beacon. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. The commentators' voices, usually a flurry of excited analysis, dropped to a stunned, hushed tone. Nintho, the breath-holding moment. It seemed all was lost. The Stanford team's fans began to cheer prematurely, their arrogance echoing through the arena. But Ethan didn't panic. His mind, honed by years of quiet observation and desperate, late-night repairs in the Fairview garage, moved with lightning speed. He saw the problem, not as an insurmountable obstacle, but as a familiar puzzle. He barked orders to his team, a newfound authority in his voice. Power down. Get me the spare actuator from the maintenance kit. Quick. With nimble fingers, under the harsh glare of the arena lights and the silent, expectant gaze of thousands, he performed an ingenious on-the-spot repair. He didn't have the exact replacement part, so, in a moment of pure intuitive genius, he improvised. He cannibalized a small motor from an old discarded camera he'd brought as a good luck charm, rewiring its intricate circuits, and, with astonishing speed, recalibrating the robot's software on his laptop, lines of code flashing across the screen. His fingers, once stained with the grease of a VCR, now danced over a keyboard with surgical precision. The crowd held its breath. The silence was deafening, broken only by the rhythmic beep of the countdown timer. Then, a faint whirring sound. The Navigator's arm, miraculously, twitched. Then, with a sudden, fluid motion, it extended, grasped the beacon, and, with an almost human grace, placed it squarely on the finish pad. The red light flashed. Victory. The arena erupted, a deafening roar of applause, cheers, and shouts of "Might, might!" cascaded down from the stands. People leaped to their feet, stunned by the impossible turnaround, by the sheer brilliance of the young man who had just snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. Commentators, their voices cracking with excitement, declared it a triumph of ingenuity, a display of unparalleled engineering genius. From their seats in the stands, quietly positioned near the back, Arthur and Martha Miller watched. They had been persuaded by Ms. Vance to attend, their skepticism about the fuss only partially masked. Arthur, initially slumped in his seat, arms crossed, a picture of weary resignation, slowly leaned forward, his jaw, habitually tight, slackened. His eyes, usually fixed on the practicalities of the ground, widened, reflecting the dazzling lights of the arena. Martha, who had been quietly knitting a scarf, her needles clicking a nervous rhythm, gasped, her hands falling to her lap. They didn't understand the technical intricacies, the complex algorithms, or the precise mechanics of the servo motor. But they saw their son. He was no longer the boy who broke the TV, small and apologetic, but a confident, brilliant engineer, commanding complex machinery, his mind moving at a speed they could barely fathom. They saw the collective awe of the crowd, felt the tremor of excitement, heard the pronouncements of genius from the commentators. And as Ethan, bathed in the spotlight, hugged his jubilant teammates, his face alight with a quiet, triumphant joy, something inside Arthur shifted. His face, usually stoic, registered a flicker of profound pride, mixed with a dawning, crushing realization of how profoundly they had underestimated him. He saw not a tinkerer, but a master. Martha's eyes filled with tears, not of disappointment, but of overwhelming pride, tinged with a quiet, aching regret. This was the powerful moment of quiet vindication for Ethan, a testament to his talent finally being undeniably recognized, not just by experts, but by his own family, even if they still struggled to fully grasp the magnitude of his genius. The boy who had once been scolded for taking apart a television had just rebuilt his own destiny, piece by painstaking piece, on a national stage. The dazzling lights of the National Collegiate Robotics Competition had faded, but their glow lingered, illuminating Ethan Miller's world with an unprecedented clarity. His victory, widely celebrated as a triumph of raw ingenuity over corporate funding, brought him more than just a trophy. It brought him national recognition. News articles from the Boston Globe to the Wall Street Journal lauded his groundbreaking AI navigation system, and industry pundits declared him a rising star. This sudden, undeniable validation of his genius forced a profound confrontation for his parents back in Fairview. The relentless reports of prodigy and visionary engineer echoing through their quiet town were impossible to ignore, chipping away at their lifelong dismissal. Arthur Miller, a man whose beliefs were as deeply rooted as the cornstalks in his fields, found himself in unfamiliar territory. The constant, subtle pressure he had exerted on Ethan to choose a practical path now felt like a heavy, misguided hand. He saw the headlines, heard the breathless commentary on national television, and witnessed the flurry of job offers pouring in from leading tech companies in Silicon Valley and Boston. His son, the boy he'd once scolded for disassembling a television, was now being courted by the titans of industry. Humility, a foreign concept to Arthur in matters of his own judgment, slowly began to seep in. He started to openly express a bewildered pride, his voice gruff but tinged with genuine awe. "Can you believe it? Martha," he'd often say, shaking his head. "MIT, and now these big fancy companies want him." He still grappled with the unfamiliarity of Ethan's world, the abstract concepts of AI and robotics still largely beyond his grasp. But the results were undeniable. Martha Miller, always more emotionally expressive, wept quiet tears of a complex mixture of pride and profound regret. She saw her son's radiant confidence on the televised highlights, a stark contrast to the shy, withdrawn boy who had once retreated into the garage. The memory of the disassembled zenith, the harsh words, the innocent yet painful misunderstanding of his burgeoning talent, flooded her. She confessed her anxieties, her voice thick with emotion, to Arthur one evening. "We just wanted him safe. Arthur," she whispered, "to have an easy life. We just didn't see what he truly was." Both parents, in their own quiet ways, offered subtle, sincere apologies for their past scolding. It wasn't a dramatic confession, but a series of small, heartfelt gestures, a lingering hug, a quiet acknowledgement of his dedication, a murmured, "We're so proud of you, son," over the phone. They were becoming Ethan's quiet, newfound supporters, their love finding a new, deeper foundation built on understanding, albeit still learning the language of his passion. Arthur Miller, the quintessential misguided, arrogant entity type B, was undergoing a quiet, profound transformation, his rigid worldview slowly expanding to embrace the extraordinary path his son had forged. The professional world wasted no time in recognizing Ethan's unique brilliance. Instead of succumbing to the allure of Silicon Valley's glitz, Ethan accepted a highly prestigious position at Etheria Robotics in Boston, a cutting-edge firm focused on developing advanced humanoid service robots. This wasn't merely a financial opportunity, it was a platform perfectly aligned with his deepest aspirations. Etheria was at the forefront of creating empathetic AI and intuitive robotics for healthcare, disaster relief, and specialized medical procedures. He would be applying his unique vision, his innate understanding of intricate mechanical systems and human-robot interaction, to projects that genuinely promised to improve human lives. He was no longer just a tinkerer, but a highly respected leader in his field, quickly rising through the ranks to lead major research initiatives. Ms. Eleanor Vance, Ethan's unwavering helper, continued to be a beacon of inspiration. Now a celebrated figure in STEM education across Indiana, she leveraged her growing reputation to advocate for unconventional teaching methods and the early identification of gifted students in underserved communities. She frequently used Ethan's story as a powerful example of how nurturing raw, unconventional talent could lead to extraordinary achievements. She and Ethan maintained a close, almost familial relationship. Their conversations, a quiet affirmation of his journey and her pivotal role in recognizing his spark. She would often visit him in Boston, fascinated by the sleek, intelligent machines he now designed, and he would return to Fairview, speaking to her eager students about the wonders of engineering. Several months after his graduation and the start of his new career, Ethan made his first visit home to Fairview. The quiet rhythm of the town, once a source of suffocation, now felt strangely comforting. He walked into the familiar warmth of his parents' kitchen, the scent of Martha's homemade apple pie filling the air. There was a quiet, poignant conversation that evening. Ethan, now more articulate and self-assured, acknowledged their good intentions, their desire for his security. "I know you just wanted what was best for me," he said softly, his gaze meeting theirs. "And I appreciate that. Truly." Arthur, sitting across from him at the familiar wooden table, cleared his throat. He looked down at his calloused hands, then back at his son, his eyes filled with a new, raw honesty. We were wrong, son," he admitted, his voice rough. "About all that practicality. We didn't see it. We should have listened more, should have seen what you were capable of." He hesitated. Then a faint, proud smile touched his lips. "Still good at fixing things, huh, son?" He gestured towards the living room where, on a freshly polished stand, sat a brand new, sleek, flat-screen television, its display vibrant and clear. It was a symbolic gesture, a quiet offering of acceptance and admiration. Martha, tears glistening in her eyes, reached across the table and squeezed Ethan's hand. her silent embrace conveying years of pride and regret. Now finally finding release, this conversation solidified the new calm in their family. Understanding had, at last, replaced misunderstanding. The love, though once expressed imperfectly through fear and caution, had found a new, deeper foundation. Ethan saw that his parents' earlier scolding hadn't been born of malice, but of a deeply ingrained desire to protect him, a desire that had, ironically, almost stifled his true potential. He now had the freedom to pursue his calling, not just with his parents' blessing, but with their genuine, if still evolving, admiration. The boy who had once hidden his passion now stood tall, his genius acknowledged, and his family, finally, truly understood. 15 years later, the golden light of a late autumn afternoon slanted through the expansive glass walls of a magnificent, architecturally striking building on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. This wasn't merely an office building. It was the newly established national headquarters of the Miller STEM Initiative, a nonprofit organization that had rapidly become a beacon of hope and innovation in the field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. Inside, the atmosphere hummed with a different kind of energy than the usual federal bureaucracy. It was a vibrant blend of quiet academic focus, hands-on mechanical exploration, and vibrant artistic creativity. Seasoned engineers and educators, their faces etched with decades of experience, worked alongside young, eager students, meticulously analyzing prototypes and sketching designs. In one corner, children, guided by gentle instructors, animatedly manipulated small robotic kits, their faces alight with discovery, their creations treated with the utmost seriousness and respect. The sounds of whirring motors, soft clicks of circuits, and enthusiastic, questioning voices filled the air, a symphony of progress. Moving through the bustling, light-filled space with an undeniable aura of quiet power and grace was Ethan Miller, now a brilliant and celebrated visionary in the field of human-robot interaction. In his early 40s, his sandy blonde hair was still unruly, but his blue eyes, those same strikingly perceptive eyes that had once discerned the secrets of a broken VCR, held an even deeper wisdom and confidence. He was no longer just the boy who broke the TV. He was a leading figure in a paradigm shift within engineering and education. His unique ability to synthesize complex mechanical and AI systems with an intuitive understanding of human needs had made him an invaluable asset to the global tech community. His passion, once a silent, misunderstood pursuit, was now a powerful, recognized force for good. Lily's most profound achievement beyond her direct casework was the establishment of the Child's Eye Foundation itself, fueled by her own initial dismissal and the desperate need to ensure no child's crucial observation was ever overlooked again. She had poured her heart and soul into building this organization. The foundation provided crucial training programs for law enforcement agencies nationwide, teaching them how to effectively interview child witnesses and, crucially, how to interpret their artistic expressions in criminal investigations. Lily herself had developed a groundbreaking curriculum specifically designed to help officers understand the nuances of children's perceptions. Recognizing that their untainted views often captured details adults filtered out. The foundation also funded research into the neuroscience of child eyewitness testimony and developed innovative digital tools to aid in the creation of child-led composite sketches. It was her profound way of paying it forward, transforming her personal journey of being unheard into a vibrant pathway for justice and a powerful advocacy for the most vulnerable witnesses. His most profound achievement was the establishment of the Miller STEM Initiative itself. Deeply aware of the need to support young, unconventional minds, particularly those from backgrounds where resources and understanding might be scarce, Ethan had poured his heart and soul into building this organization. Fueled by his own initial struggles and the profound impact of Ms. Vance's belief, he was determined that no other child's raw talent would be stifled by misunderstanding or lack of opportunity. The initiative established a nationwide program that actively identified and nurtured aspiring engineers and inventors from rural and underserved communities. It provided comprehensive scholarships for higher education, dedicated mentorships with leading experts in STEM fields, and perhaps most importantly, it funded and equipped state-of-the-art tinkering labs in schools across the country. These labs, unlike traditional classrooms, actively encourage children to take things apart and put them back together in new ways, fostering innate curiosity and hands-on experimentation over rote learning and conformity. He ensured that financial barriers would never again stifle raw talent. His parents, immensely proud, were actively involved in the foundation, witnessing their son's legacy unfold, a testament to how far a misunderstood passion could take someone. His professional life continued to intertwine with the influential figures who had shaped his journey. Ms. Eleanor Vance, now a revered figure in STEM education across the nation, served on the board of the Miller STEM Initiative. She continued to be a beacon of inspiration, her passion for fostering genuine curiosity undimmed by the years. She often spoke at the Foundation's events, her voice clear and resonant, about the profound importance of nurturing unconventional talent. Frequently using Ethan's story as her most compelling example, their bond remained strong, built on mutual respect and shared conviction. In a quiet corner of the Foundation's bustling office, a familiar figure with silvering hair and a newly acquired, profound sense of humility often sat. Sheriff Brody McCallan, now retired from active duty, but serving as a senior advisor for the Child's Eye Foundation, meticulously reviewed training materials. The Sterling's great misjudgment narrative had proven stubbornly persistent, chipping away at his once unassailable reputation. His projects, while still visually polished, often lacked the emotional depth that had now become Eleanor's signature. He rarely spoke of her publicly, but the subtle, almost imperceptible flickers of regret in his eyes during industry events were not lost on those who remembered his cruel dismissal. In a rare, almost unprecedented moment of public acknowledgement, a junior executive from Sterling's own studio had discreetly referred an accomplished, albeit older, screenwriter to the Vance Foundation, a silent admission that perhaps there was indeed untapped talent beyond the youthful facade. The industry, slowly but surely, was beginning to learn that a rich story often required the wisdom of time, a lesson taught by Eleanor's undeniable triumph. He and Lily, a testament to profound redemption and shared purpose, often co-presented at these training sessions, their shared harrowing past a powerful testament to the program's necessity and effectiveness. His booming laugh had softened, replaced by a thoughtful, empathetic tone that commanded far greater respect. The old arrogance was gone, replaced by a quiet, unwavering dedication to ensuring no other law enforcement officer repeated his tragic mistake. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan stood before a large whiteboard in the Foundation's main lecture hall, a marker in his hand. He was outlining the principles of intuitive engineering for a group of aspiring young inventors and their mentors, his voice clear and authoritative. He spoke of empathy in design, of seeing beyond the obvious schematics, of the profound truth that often resides in the unfiltered perception of a curious mind. He paused, then gestured to a framed photograph hanging prominently beside him. It was a grainy, slightly faded picture from his childhood, a young Ethan, screwdriver in hand, his face alight with intense concentration, excitedly examining the guts of a disassembled television, wires and circuit boards splayed around him. Beneath it, a small, elegant plaque read, "Sometimes, the clearest vision comes from the purest heart. Take it apart, see what's inside." As Ethan looked at the photograph, then at the faces of the young, eager students, he saw not just curiosity, but genuine understanding, a newfound openness. He saw a young girl in the front row, clutching a worn toolkit, her eyes shining with recognition. He saw an older boy, initially stoic, now leaning forward, his expression one of deep consideration, a faint smear of grease on his cheek. The world was changing. Education was changing. It was a challenging, ongoing process. But the seeds had been planted, nurtured by the courage of a boy who dared to break things apart to understand them, and the unwavering belief of those who saw his true potential. A new, more inclusive spring was indeed blooming, driven by the principles of curiosity, perseverance, and the profound power of seeing. Ethan Miller, standing tall amidst this evolving landscape, was not just a genius robotics engineer. He was a beacon, guiding others towards a future where every curious mind, no matter how small or unconventional, held the potential to innovate, to create, and to bring forth a better world. The old television, once a source of punishment, now served as an eternal reminder that genius, often unseen by the powerful, can be unveiled by the purest of hearts. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.